Lift your lid. Welcome to Swift Talk with Sherry Swift, helping you experience explosive growth, moving from where you are to where you want to be. Say no to mediocrity and yes to the life you want and deserve. Here is your host, best-selling author, performance coach, and speaker, Sherry Swift.
Welcome to Swift Talk with Sherry Swift. I'm your host, Sherry Swift. We're continuing the conversation in our growth series and having the important conversation about financial growth. As a business and performance coach, a great number of my clients and partnerships are entrepreneurs, small business owners, startups, independent salespeople, and people who are 1099s, responsible for their own retirement plans, investment, and residual income opportunities. So often in this environment, we focus on the grind, the work, the momentum, and forget all about the need for strategic financial planning. We do what we have to do so that we can do what we want to do. But if there's no money, there's no doing. Please welcome Joe Miltello of Infinite Wealth Advisory Group and the author of the book titled Know Your Financial Freedom. His firm provides retirement solutions for individuals and families, and the commercial division of his firm assists business owners with the cost reduction and tax mitigation and succession planning. Joe, welcome to Swift Talk.
Hi, Sherry. How you doing?
I am fantastic. Super excited that you're here today and for us to have this very important conversation today.
Thank you for having me. I'd love to attend. This is fantastic.
Okay. So how about we jump right into it, Joe? Describe your service a little bit for me. Who do you help?
Well, we help everyone, individuals, families to start, okay? Regardless if it's a business owner, business always flows down to the individual at the end of the day. So ultimately what we're doing is we're helping the individual, and we want them to identify. There's so many areas in our world today, in the financial world rather, when we're looking at investments and retirement. And one of the big problems that we see, Sherry, is when it comes down to retirement changes all the rules. And those are some of the areas that people aren't identifying with, or they're not being taught or educated about. So what we're doing is a little different than your traditional firms. We're not a Jones or a Schwab out there, or a Wells Fargo, so to speak. And those are all great firms. But when you're focusing on retirement, you have to identify in different areas. So it's a paradigm shift in your thought process.
Yeah, I can see that.
And that's really where the education comes in.
So tell me a little bit about when you're meeting with someone for the very first time, Joe, what does that education or the initiation of the education look like? Because, here's the deal. I'm going to be completely frank and honest with you, right? For so many years, I've been a small business owner, and I've coached many, hundreds and hundreds of small business owners. We are freaked out by this conversation. Can we just deal with that for a second? Okay. And I'm not quite sure why we are so freaked out by this conversation, but we are freaked out by this conversation. So talk to me a little bit about and put me at ease around what does the beginning of this conversation look like if we decide to sit down together?
Sherry, that is such a perfect question because it's the fear of unknown. And the problem with the investments today is the fear of unknown. We don't know where we're going to end up. We always have the hope. We see illustrations of investments of what we should be achieving, but do they always end up there? So what we do, first and foremost, is I'm going to sit down with you and we're going to talk. We're going to find out what your goals are. What are your lifestyle needs? One of the biggest things that people don't identify with when it comes down to their finances is identifying their life stage. That's critical. Are you in the accumulation stage of your life? Or are you in the distribution or preservation? So these are some of the areas that we help you identify with. Okay, that's where the education starts.
That is so interesting. Can you break that down for me, those three phases, just a little bit deeper?
Absolutely. And there's very critical areas there, and I'm glad you asked that. When we go out and we start our working career, each and every one of us are brought up in our lifetime to get a good education, get a good job, start planning our lives, and start putting away for our retirement, right? Rule of thumb is most likely put away 10% if you can out of all your checks. And by the time you get to retirement, everything should be great. You'll have plenty of money to live on, and life will be grand. But history has taught us that's not how it works. The markets are not consistent. They're up sometimes, they're down the others. So when we start our working careers, accumulation is that beginning time of our life. Let's just say we start our careers around age 25. That's when we're going to start contributing to that nest egg. We're going to start putting that money away. And our goal is to maximize that nest egg. We want to fill it up as much as we can. Now, coming into the second stage of life is what we call the preservation stage. And if we're about 10 years or so out from retirement, and let's just use the age 65 because it's a good number. Most people try to focus on retirement around age 65. So we're going to use that for the sake of the example. So if we're about 10 years out from that, we need to start focusing on preservation. That's identifying what life stage that we're in. At the next step from there is identifying your assets. That's what we help them do. Because if we have assets that are in areas that could suffer the risk of loss, we need to make changes. Okay, and I can break that down a little bit as we go along, but let's touch on the last stage. That's the distribution stage of life. Once we get into retirement, see, this is where that paradigm shift in our thought process has to come in.
Yeah.
Once we enter retirement, we have to be able to count on an income for the rest of our life. We have to know that that money is going to be there for us forever. We have to know that money is going to be there that we cannot outlive. That's what our goal is. And at that point, we're going to try to identify legacy, what the goals are. So you'd have to ask yourself, Sherry, once I get into retirement, what kind of lifestyle do I want to live and how much money am I going to need to maintain that lifestyle? And that's part of identifying those three life stages: accumulation, preservation, and distribution. Those are where your plans need to start changing. That's that education process that we start with right there.
Wow. You know, Joe, coming from a coach, the way your approach, your firm's approach to this conversation is comforting, and more importantly, it's consulting. You guys are coaching people through the process. And to me, it sounds like this is a big difference between a firm like yours and one of the other larger firms that you mentioned just a couple minutes ago. Would you agree?
Absolutely. And it's the reason why I did write the book, and it's the reason why I'm writing another. It's education, because I cannot make you feel comfortable unless you know that I'm teaching you the proper way to build and grow your wealth. Wouldn't you say that's true?
I agree. I mean, when it comes to the conversation of money, it is money and wealth and investing our money, and especially any of us who lived through, our shift just 10 years ago, right? I mean, we are very sensitive. We are very sensitive to the conversation, who we're having the conversation with, who we can trust with the conversation. I appreciate your approach, your consultative approach to this. Let me ask you this. What are the most popular misconceptions about the service that you provide? And what is it about those misconceptions that have a tendency to keep people from reaching?
Well, I tell you, one of the biggest hurdles are they kind of clump you in with everyone else. And that gets difficult because we did mention some firms. And again, I'm not pointing out specific firms. I'm just making examples.
Sure.
That's a different type of a financial firm. Okay. Most of those firms are just stockbrokers. They're selling stocks, bonds, mutual funds. And we all need that at a point in time in our life. We do. But the misconception is that they can stay in that one spot forever. And it kind of works like this. I usually tell this little story, and I'm not going to get into the story because it would take too long. But as an example, in order to understand it's time in your life to make that shift in your thought process, it works like this. If you had a professional wrestler that wanted to become a professional football player, he would need to go out and find a new trainer. Okay, it's a completely different discipline. One of them, he's got a trainer that's teaching him how to execute certain moves. And on the other side of the fence, when he gets over to the football field, you've got another trainer teaching him how to execute a whole different set of moves. And they know, without a doubt, that if they don't find that new trainer, that they're going to end up losing their competition. And that's how it works in the financial world. You're growing your money in your accumulation period of life. But when it comes down to the preservation stage that we talked about, that's when you have to identify that it's time to find that new trainer, okay? And we help individuals do that by identifying their assets. And I try to make it easy for everyone. You know, we talk about coaching and helping people understand. When you come down and you come and sit down with me at my office, you or any individual out there, and they bring all their statements to me and we're looking at their assets, the biggest thing that I see is they have a hard time identifying what the assets and what they really have. So to make it simpler for them, we teach them how to identify their assets by the color of money. And there's 3 colors specifically: red, green, and yellow.
Okay.
Red are assets that are making you money, that are growing with the market, but they also can suffer the most loss. Green are safer instruments, okay? Those are instruments that will earn you accumulation on your wealth, but it might be less than what you can get out of the red money, but it's safe. And then yellow would be properly managed money, like a portfolio of funds. See, and we fine-tune that. Once we understand who you are as an individual, what your goals are, what your lifestyle needs are, then we help you reallocate that. And once you can look at your portfolio and see red, green, and yellow, then it starts to make sense. Now you have a properly balanced portfolio for the rest of your life. And our goal is to create an income that you can never outlive. Always going to be there for you.
That is fantastic. So it sounds like you're going to be able to service the client for many, many, many years to come, and that you're going to be able to work with them in transition as they go from one stage and one point of their life to another.
Absolutely. In many cases, it's a lifelong relationship, especially from retirement on. You know, and Sherry, one of the simple things people don't understand is there's certain ways to invest money. If you're still in the accumulation stage and you're young, it doesn't take a lot. You can build some massive wealth if it's done properly. So, yeah, we love the education side of stuff. And you know what? It builds a much stronger relationship. If you and I are working together, I think you're going to want to come back and see me every single time, because you know the safety and the predictability is there.
Yeah, I think I'm going to want to come see you anyway, Joe. I really do. Okay. So, I heard you say when people come to sit down with you in your office, where is your office located?
Well, we have 2 locations. My main office is in Sterling Heights, which is between Metropolitan Parkway and 15 Mile off of Van Dyke. That is in Michigan. We do service clients across the country. I've had clients from the East Coast to the West Coast and throughout Canada. We're actually able to help a lot of the Canadian citizens out, and have a lot of Canadian clients, and they're fantastic and wonderful, and we love working with them. But yes, Troy and Sterling Heights in the state of Michigan. Okay. So, and we'll travel when we need to, and also, of course, we can do a lot of it over the computer nowadays as well.
Okay. Talk to me a little bit about if I'm going to come in and sit with you, or if we're going to start this relationship via a webinar meeting and I'm just going to send you all of my documents. What are the most important things that I need together to begin this relationship and to begin this process?
Another great question. Well, you're hitting the nail right on the head today, Sherry. I tell you, that's great, because a lot of times people don't consider some of the stuff they have to bring in to be able to build a proper plan. And that is, you know, we're going to want to see all the investment statements, of course. If you have a qualified plan, such as a 401k or a 403b, okay, possibly through your employer, or it might be an old one that you had from a previous employer. Mm-hmm. Maybe you started your own individual IRA, which is another qualified plan, of course. You might have your own stock, bond, and mutual fund portfolio. We're going to look at that. But I also suggest now, again, to be able to service people properly, it was always my belief that we have to look at everything. So I always advise people, if you have life insurance, bring your life insurance policies in, because we have licensed insurance agents within our firm. Mm-hmm. We'll review that for you absolutely free of charge. All our consultations are free. When we sit down initially, we look at everything for you. And the funny thing about life insurance is most people really don't know what they have. What we find out quite a bit is they don't have the right type of policy. They might have goals in place and it's not set up correctly, or even something as simple as the beneficiary is not set up properly, which can always cause issues down the road. So we help them change those things up as part of the service. We'll even have our CPAs look at tax returns if somebody has questions.
Wow, that's fantastic. So talk to me a little bit about what usually would keep someone from starting? It's so obvious to me, Joe, that this is something that we all need to do. And, being at the phase and point in my life that I'm in, I'm no spring chicken, as I'm consistently reminded by my children. So
you too, huh?
So, it's such an obvious conversation for me, and the importance is so obvious. What would be the reason that people would decide not to invest or partner with you? Is it price, or is it time commitment? What is it that keeps people from starting this most important journey? And do you find that from a percentile perspective that there are just a lot of people that just won't get started?
And you're absolutely right. And it's the financial world is a peculiar world, and the reason is a lot of times they're getting advice from the wrong areas. Sometimes they believe that they're okay where they're at. One of the biggest things that we see, Sherry, is one of the problems, I should say, that really concern us when we're going to set up a plan for clients. We talked about this already. We talked about income for life, money that you cannot outlive. One of the biggest concerns that I have as an advisor for a client is do not sabotage your own retirement because you believe it's set up properly. And what I mean by that is running out of money. Nothing is worse than living in retirement all of a sudden being cut short because your accounts ran dry. And unfortunately, we see this quite a bit because there's what we call the risk of sequence returns. And what that is basically, not to try to describe it in full, but loss overshadows gains. Part of that paradigm shift, Sherry, when you go enter into retirement, you're no longer contributing to your retirement plans in most cases. Mm-hmm. You might have retirement account or investments growing, but you're no longer contributing. What you're doing is you're starting to take those withdrawals. You're living off of that. So you'd be surprised if you have a negative year and your money is not allocated in the proper accounts with that red, green, and yellow that we spoke about.
Yes.
You can suffer a double negative in 1 year because you're withdrawing. Let's just say somebody wants to take out 5% a year to supplement the retirement income, but there was a 7 or 8% loss in the market. Well, that's 13%. So the following year, in order to recoup that, you don't need 13%. You need 15.5% just to get back to where you were. Loss always overshadows gain, so that's a very important area that we educate our clients on.
Wow.
Did that answer the question a little bit for you? Or?
It did answer the question, and it makes me wish that we had more time together. Here's what I know. I know that this is not enough time to have this very important conversation, and I know that we all need more.
Absolutely.
So I want to thank you for being our guest this week and for sharing all of this knowledge and all of your expertise. Would you do me a favor and tell me how my listeners can find you?
Absolutely. They can reach out to us. Of course, they can call us directly. Our office number, if you want, I'll just give that out real quick, 586-200-1033. That comes direct to us at the main office. They can go to the website, which is www.infinitewealthinc.com. infinitewealthinc.com. Okay. Or they can just send us an email direct. And my email is joe@infinitewealthinc.com. So they can reach out to us in several different ways.
Perfect. To our listeners, I'm so grateful that you're here with me on this journey. And I want to invite you to connect with me on Instagram at Swift Talk for upcoming episodes and series and an opportunity to win a free coaching session. Visit me on my website at www.sherryswift.com to read my blog on this episode that's focused on financial growth and to receive a bullet-pointed recap of this episode, which is going to be amazing because Joe was outstanding and amazing. That's just a little side note. And let's be friends on Facebook. You can find me on Facebook at Swift Transition. Since we've been focused on financial growth this episode, Joe has shared with me that he would love to give away a few of his books to the first 3 people to write to me at swifttalk at sherryswift.com. Again, write to me and just indicate that you'd love to take Joe up on his offer on an autographed book, and write to me at swifttalk@sherryswift.com, and we'll make sure that Joe gets that order and he'll send that right out. Please comment wherever you're listening and tell a friend, because my goal is explosive connections in order to be a life-impacting resource for many. Bring someone along. Life is delicious, my friends. Let's enjoy a great big slice of it together. Till next time.
You've been listening to Swift Talk with Sherry Swift. If you would like to schedule time with Sherry, download the show notes and much, much more. Find it all at www.sherryswift.com.